Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. My name's Matt,
And my name is Jadrian.
and we are thrilled to have you here on the day after Valentine's Day. I would ask you, Jadrian, what you did on Valentine's Day, but it's February 8th as we're recording, so we don't know. But
I
how are
was
things in your world?
well, if the next week goes well, I'll have a very nice dinner. And I like to treat myself no matter what the holiday is. I will I'll take any excuse. I think a couple weeks ago it was Hug an Economist Day,
I
and
saw that.
I just sat there and just kept myself a little warm for that day.
That was good. We had a faculty meeting on Hug on Economist Day, and I had to thank everybody for, I knew it
For
was an
not hugging.
important day for so many people, and yet they still came to the faculty meeting. But that was good. So, what are you drinking this
It
evening?
is. Maybe I should call this a New Year's resolution. I don't know. I really need to clean out my fridge. So, like last week, I was starting to clean some stuff out, and I looked at my fridge and I go, "This refrigerator is like half beverages. Like it's unreal. It's not even sodas mostly. I've got milk and orange juice, the usuals. I've got my coffee creamer. I've got lemonades that I've found places. I've gotten a real addiction to these. They're not called. There's Poppy, but then there's another one. Oh, do you know what I'm talking about? It's like the soda that is like good for your gut health.
I
I
have no
can't think of
idea.
the name of it. I'll find it in a second. I've got those in there. I've got ginger ales because Brian O'Rourke talked me into a bar cart. I've got sodas. I've got beers. I'm trying to clean out the fridge. So that was a long way of saying today I am drinking a Peak Organic Brewing IPA. That's all it says
Okay.
is IPA.
I've
So I think
had
I got
that
it from like a
before.
beer box
Can't
sometime.
recall what I thought, but I remember having that. I am keeping up my tradition. I mentioned I wasn't doing dry January. I did damp January. And the idea is to try to cut down on the beer consumption. So if I'm going to have two in a night, which tonight I'm planning on having more than one during here, and then afterwards I'm sure I'll have one during dinner to make one non-alcoholic. And so I'm going to do I've done this before, but it's going to be the Run
Okay.
Wild non-alcoholic IPA. There was actually a story on this company in the Wall Street Journal on the weekend edition. That's
Hmm.
pretty fascinating. The market research they did basically saying, hey, beer drinkers never drank non-alcoholic because they were terrible, but a whole bunch of them said they would drink them if they were
Yeah.
good. And I think this company, they did a nice job coming up with one that tastes like an IPA. So
I've seen it. You got me real close when I was at Kroger, and then I was like, nope,
yeah,
too many beverages in the fridge. I got to cut some of these out.
sure. I
So
had to kind of
m-
cut it back.
maybe it's coming. I did
Yeah.
look it up while you were saying that. The soda I was talking about are called Ollie Pops. I don't know if you've
Okay.
seen those at the grocery store. There was a great Planet Money podcast about them because they're not sold in the soda aisle. They're sold over in like the cold section, like near kombuchas and stuff. So you buy them by the can, but they're like 250 or $3 a can. They're really good, but they're supposed to have
Yeah.
like probiotic, like that sort of stuff in it. So I got a
Very
bunch of those in
cool.
there too. I need to get rid of.
I might have to try one. Yeah. Neither of these companies have sponsored us yet, but if
Yes.
you're listening, we can be bribed, people. So,
Oh, Peak
but
Brewery, where are you from? You're from Portland,
Colorado.
Maine. I don't think
Oh no.
that's not gonna work.
Well,
Cheers, Matt.
cheers. So
Matt, I don't know if you've noticed. Matt and I have not gotten to talk in a couple weeks or not. I
I
have an
like the
office.
decorations. You've
I've
got
got an
art.
office.
Yeah.
So my hope is that those of you listening, my hope is that I am less echoey because I have purchased sound barrier things to put in the office, and there are things in the office to absorb some sound. So my hope is that I am not nearly as echoey as you've heard me for the past 6 months.
Sounds great. Sound is fantastic. So the a couple months ago, I remember you thought, wow, there's a bowl game in the Bahamas, and I want to go to that bowl game.
Yes, I
And then
did.
it ended up moving, but to get to the bowl game, you took a cruise.
I did. I did. I went. Maybe I'll say non-traditional. I am a big cruise fan. So there is a bowl game that is every year except 2023. The Bahamas Bowl is played in the Bahamas. In 2023, the Bahamas Bowl was played in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is actually like 3 hours away. I could have gone. Um, but so I love the economics of cruises. So that's where Matt and I are going today. But
Yeah,
I want to
that will be
start
our
from
topic.
I want to start from the beginning and say I love the economics of it. It is just so much more affordable than like most travel, if you're traveling by yourself, right? If I wanted to fly to the Bahamas and then stay in a hotel in the Bahamas for a couple nights, the food that I would have there, right? All those little parts come together. It's gonna be expensive. Like flying to the Bahamas is out of Roanoke, Virginia,
Yeah.
$400, $500. It's expensive. Hotels in the Bahamas are, I mean, I can get cheaper hotels, but the hotels that I'm staying in are between $100 and $200 a night.
Sure, sure.
It would be expensive. A cruise to the Bahamas in December was like $250 plus taxes and fees. It was $300 total.
Yeah.
And I had to fly to Florida, so I still had to fly, but flights to Florida are way cheaper than the flights to the Bahamas. It's basically my hotel for I was there for
But
three
it's the
days.
hotel. Yeah.
It's my hotel. It's my food, my hotel. I love
All the
cruises.
food, all the hotel, and a whole lot of entertainment all combined.
Oh, I gained weight. The food, there was a lot
Yeah.
of food and I ate a lot of that food.
I get a ton of steps, and the first days I'll even work out, but I'll gain on those too. I've yeah, I've done a fair number of cruises, maybe half a dozen or so, and I'm actually going on one over spring break.
Oh, great.
And from here, actually, we just are driving over. It's a 3 hour drive to. It's out of New Jersey, so it's a Royal Caribbean 7 night cruise. So,
Where are you
uh,
going?
the locations aren't my favorites, to be honest.
Okay.
It's more on the timing. It's good. It's going to go to Port Canaveral, which I'm perfectly fine, but there's not really enough time to go do a full Disney day. You get there too
Right.
late. So
Yes.
we'll go to the beach, and there's a Wizard of Oz museum we're going to check out, and
Okay.
maybe go to maybe a brewery will call. That could happen. And then it does go to Nassau, and it does go to their perfect day at Coco Cay side, thing. But yeah, we got a balcony cabin for pretty reasonably priced
Yeah.
for
Did you purchase the balcony cabin or did you auction for the balcony cabin?
we just simply purchased it. It was
Okay.
for this time of year, it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
But in speaking of good deals, I will share the screen. So I've gone to Carnival now 3 different times.
Okay.
And
I'm not a huge Carnival fan. I'm gonna be honest. I've been twice on Carnival.
okay.
Not a fan. I mean, it's fine.
I'm going to log in as we talk to, speaking of cheap cruises here, and I'll even share the screen so we can discover this together. Because I have, as Jadrian knows, I enjoy going to the casino from time to time. And they have blackjack there. And I mean, I'm on the trip. I'm not playing too much blackjack, but I bet, there might be times, part of what I like about cruises is if my wife might want to, like, her idea of a vacation is a little bit more time just doing nothing and reading. And I like doing some.
That's me. I'm
Yeah,
the
and
reader.
I like a little bit of the nothing and reading, but not as much as she likes the nothing and reading. So, well, she does some of the nothing and reading. I'll take an hour and I will go to I'll go to the casino. Well, because of that, I'm now in their system. And here's the rates, Jadrian.
Oh my gosh.
So
How much are you gambling?
It's not that much. Actually, I'm up on them too. Lifetime.
Wow.
So if you're on the YouTube, you see this, but 7 night Eastern Caribbean from Port Canaveral, $50 per person per room. For the seven, that's for the
Wow.
7 nights. That's not per day. That's
Yeah.
$50. Now the taxes and fees are going to load a ton to it.
Mhm.
And these are for cruises that leave very soon. So these are
yeah, I love that all the other rooms are normal priced, and
Yep.
it's just this interior room that you're getting
They
for
will
cheap.
put you into the inside. But look at this, an 8 night cruise out of
Well,
Miami for
let's
$50.
let's say these out, right? So yeah, Matt, scroll down just a little bit. Click on one or go back so we can see the room total. So Matt is showing
Yeah.
us a bunch of cruises, thanks to his his loyalty status. $50 for an interior room.
Yep.
Ocean view, 1,059. Balcony,
Yep.
1,349. So we're gonna talk about that later.
And
But
honestly,
that's great.
those
That's
other
cool.
prices aren't even that terrible,
No,
to be
they're
honest.
not. For seven,
let's see.
no, actually, well, let's do it. Do the math, right? This is what I always say. Do
Yeah.
the math, right? 7 days at $1,000. If you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're spending $1,000." Well, if you stay 7 nights at a hotel that costs $100 a night, you're spending $700 before taxes and fees,
Yeah,
and that doesn't include any food.
And good luck
It's
getting it
not
at 7 nights. And that doesn't, and then there's all the show. There's all the
right.
shows that are in
There's all
there
the
too.
shows, and you're not going to three different countries.
Yeah, it's not loading up the taxes and fees part here, which
They want you
honestly
to
will
they
be
want you to
way
put that in
more
your
than the
cart.
$50. No, I just think they're a little bit. I
Yeah.
think it's a little glitchy today.
Well,
But
so I will say, Matt and I are big cruise fans, so we should probably share our bias from the start. That I mean, we could talk about some of the negatives of cruises if we really want
yeah,
to. We're rational people, but we do like cruises, so we probably should
but
say that up front.
the economics of it, like though, there's a number of different topics that
Hmm.
we could address, and one that in our very in our 1 minute pre uh, pre going live prep that you mentioned, and I certainly agree with, is looking at what economists would call monopolistic competition.
Yes. So Matt pulled up the Carnival website. I like you may have heard me say this earlier. I don't really love Carnival. I've been on a Carnival. I've been on a two. One when I was a kid. I went with my parents, and then one later as an adult. I've been to Royal Caribbean. I love Royal Caribbean way better. Um, but one of the things that's really fascinating. This is what Matt and I were talking about a little bit before we hopped on. I'm always eyeballing cruises, so I looked at them for spring break as well because I was like, "Ooh, where can I go?" I came across a cruise line I had never heard of, MSC Cruises, and I was shocked at how cheap they were. And I actually ended up like I was sitting there going like, what are you doing different? Like, are you not giving away food? Like,
Mhm.
it was like half the price. It was this sort of like, and I don't have any special perks, but it was these sort of like 6 days in the Caribbean for $150, and I was like,
Yeah,
that's not normal. But I learned a lot about it. It was really cool. You're right there. So monopolistic competition is different companies selling different products
that are
um,
similar though.
that are
They're
similar.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's yeah. So fast food restaurants are often the classic one that I'll bring up in class because if you really are like, what, I'm really feeling Burger King,
Hmm.
but you drive by Taco Bell and they have a 49-cent taco day, you might stop at Taco Bell
Yep.
because they're these are and also one of the conditions, and I don't know that the cruise lines quite hit this, it's many
Hmm.
small sellers. I'd say
Yeah,
there's
that's true.
many.
Yeah,
It's
that's
tough
true.
to it's tough to call them small, but there certainly are many.
So we really should say it is oligopolistic industry that has differentiated products
Differentiated
because they're
products.
definitely not getting zero profit in the
Yeah,
long run. They're making money.
and there's so many. It does have traces. It almost plays like a monopolistically competitive
Hmm.
industry, though.
And
With
so a lot of it, right, is that I mean they are competing on price. These are for a lot of cruises. Matt and I are on the younger end of this, but if you've been on a cruise, you know that it skews a little older, and that is a very price sensitive group. So having cheap prices is actually a really big important component. But no, truthfully, Matt, it probably is oligopolistic that is doing sort of pricing that's Bertrand, right? Bertrand pricing in a monopolist or in a differentiated product, right? So if we're
Yep,
gonna get
yep,
real nerdy, we don't want to offend any of our teachers who
yeah.
are like, there's not many sellers.
But like part of what it is they'll each offer something slightly
Hmm.
different.
Yeah,
We've done Norwegian cruises that have had Broadway style shows. And in
yeah,
fact, I know the Royal Caribbean we're going on has the We Will Rock You, the Queen one that was in the West
cool.
End literally for a while. Uh, Other places could have, they try to differentiate themselves. Carnival's ads, they try to brand themselves as the party cruise, right? They're
Yeah,
pretty blatant about it.
so speaking of a party cruise, this was the mistake I made going to the Bahamas Bowl. I didn't realize this. I had only ever been on like week long cruises. Like I'd been on like 5 day, 6 day, 7 day cruises, but this cruise to the Bahamas was just a 3 day, 2 night cruise. I got on the boat thinking, okay, it's Royal Caribbean. It's a little bit nicer, a little bit more expensive. It's not going to be it's not going to be as partyish as Carnival. I've never seen so many bachelor parties and bachelorette parties in my life. It was a party. And then I connected the dots that this was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, relatively cheap way to hang out with your buddies and drink a lot.
Yes,
So I did
yeah.
not get to read as much as I was hoping.
Not quite as much. The We did a 4 night once, and it was the alcohol intake was
Mhm.
was quite a bit higher. It was
I don't know how people do it. So I mean, Matt and I drink, right? Like the show is about us having a drink and talking. So maybe that can be one of our transitions. One of the ways that they do make things cheaper is they unbundle some stuff. So some things are fully bundled. So, right, you pay for your cruise, you're going to get your hotel, you're going to get almost all the food on the boat. There's some
Well,
places you can eat.
you
You
could
could.
very
You don't.
well eat
Yeah.
for free the whole time.
Yes. You're right there. You have options to go eat at a Johnny Rockets or something, but like it's your food, it's your entertainment, it's your hotel. It's almost fully covered, except for one really important part, which is the alcohol. So I should actually broadly say the drink package is different. So if you want sodas, that's a different drink package. But if you want alcohol, that is it is a much more expensive package, and they try to change the prices leading up to it. But you know what? I've done the math. It's like even when it's early, it was like I think it was like $75 or $80 a day. Like that was the cheapest I saw it get. And then like closer to the cruise, it was like $100. But here's the thing, like on a boat, a drink will cost you between 10 and 15
$12.
bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Depends.
too bad.
If you want a
It
mixed
depends.
drink,
A mixed drink will cost you about 15 bucks. Um, you need to drink like 6 or 7 drinks a day
yeah,
to break even. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I can have a drink in the morning with breakfast. I could do like a screwdriver, a mimosa.
yeah,
I can have a drink with lunch. I can maybe have 2 drinks in the. I'm like sitting here going, I don't.
not
My
gonna do
liver,
that.
my heartburn. Actually, I forget my liver. My heartburn. I'm too
Yeah,
old
yeah,
to drink that much every single day. And then the worst part is if you go with somebody and you share a cabin, both of you have to have the
yeah.
drink package. So you need both people to be drinkers,
So
or else it's not worth it.
I've got it on Norwegian. Often gives you these free at sea offers, and so
Mhm.
I've done the drink packages for that. And then we've done a drink package in another way, and I'll let you figure out why this was worth it.
Okay.
There are 5 of us in the family, and we've done a couple family cruises, and we would get 2 rooms,
Okay.
and one of the rooms
You
would
put
be
the
the
kid.
drink package.
I was gonna say. So actually, if you and Amanda weren't in the same room, if you and
No,
one
and
of the
well, by rule, now if we end up being in the same room,
right.
and then they're in the adjoining, but by law,
Uh,
I have to be in the one room with a child, and
yes.
she has to
So
be in the other room.
that's what I meant. Yeah. So if you're in the room with a kid,
Yep.
you can't make the kid get a drink
No,
package.
they have to get the soda package, but that's okay because
Interesting.
one of
Yeah.
them getting the soda package, they could split. So if one
Yeah.
adult gets the drink
That's.
package, and now they don't let you get 2 at a time, you have to
Mhm.
wait 5 whole minutes to go get the second. But then all of a sudden the math works out pretty well if
Yeah.
you're going to, it's like I don't drink too excessively, but yeah, you might have, you're on vacation, you might have a couple beers in the afternoon and one or two at dinner, and then an after dinner drink, and it doesn't take, you could
No.
literally be very paced and go through some. And then if you have a second person, then it made it worth
See,
it.
I always said I could do that one day. You're not going to catch me doing that on a 7 day cruise. I can't. I can't do that.
Well,
So
and on
yeah,
top of it, beer is reasonably priced, I'd
yeah,
say, like
10 or 12.
$7.
I think they're a little bit
Beer?
higher. They're not that much.
Oh, beer's
I
cheap.
was,
Beer's
maybe you haven't.
cheap.
Maybe you let me know in a couple weeks when you go on your new cruise.
I was on maybe it's those carnival prices that are
The
doing,
party
but
cruise. So yeah,
uh
so this is one way that cruises make a lot of money. They
yeah,
price discriminate people. So people like me, I like to drink, but I don't like to drink at that price.
yeah.
But there are you'll see it on a cruise. There are definitely people who have no problem meeting their drink requirement.
And
I
we've
would say
talked.
actually,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I'd say for cruises, it's the one time I go soda free because I won't even pay for the soda package
We had to buy the soda package. There's no way around it.
because you're addicted.
So I think we've talked price discrimination briefly before, but just for those who are listening and not sure what we're saying, the term discrimination, often you'd hear wildly negative connotations, but it just means that a business is selling a product, basically the same product, essentially, to different consumers for different prices. And it's not always exactly the same product, but it's a way that a firm can attract business from somebody who's not willing to pay very much, who has a low willingness to pay, uh, but then also make quite a bit more in revenue
Mhm.
off of those with a higher willingness to pay. And we've actually already talked about two, one being the drink package, or just alcohol in general, right? You
Mhm.
say you don't get soda on the trips. No, they're getting the soda from me. I spent $70 to get a week's full of the refill soda. I mean, I'm not going to worry about that. And the other one we talked about was we showed some of the prices. We talked about the
Mhm.
prices. Interior room costs pretty much the same for them as a balcony room, the prices are wildly different for
Hmm.
those.
But even you paying $50 versus somebody else who isn't a gambler paying more. So
Yes.
I hate the term price discrimination because exactly what you said, it introduces this incredibly negative connotation. I like, well, it's sort of weird. And maybe this is my big question for the economics community. We talk about product differentiation. Why don't we call it price differentiation so that we have, and it's literally just
Move
different
the
products
stigma.
versus different prices. Like it just makes more sense to call it price
Yeah.
differentiation. I don't know. That's one of my pet peeves. But I love those sorts of things, right? Like almost as soon as you take a cruise, you get a new
A
tier,
loyalty
a
card.
loyalty tier. You basically cruise once and you're officially in a tier up. But even those, right? Those are really great examples where you get 10% off at a Johnny Rockets, or you get one free coffee at the Starbucks. You get Wi-Fi for one day. Like the
Yeah.
deals are not always that great,
No,
but
no,
they're
no.
deals, right? And those sorts of deals attract people to spend a little bit more than they normally would. And so it's a great way for companies, whether it's a cruise or not, but a great way to sort of squeeze out a little bit more money for people rather than making everybody pay for Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Just
And I
make the
think
ones who really want it pay.
cruise ships are just fantastic at figuring out all the ways they can do this between the various bingo or
Hmm.
deal or no deal competitions or whatever the gambling competitions they'll have. The casino in general, the alcoholic beverages, the soda package. You mentioned some restaurants have an additional charge. That's the
Yeah.
one I'm usually too cheap on.
Okay.
Is to pay
I've
more.
never, yeah, I've never gone to any of the restaurants on board. I'm like, I mean, again, I really like Royal Caribbean. In my mind, why would I pay to go to one of these other restaurants? The dinner's really good.
It's a
And if you
fancy
don't,
restaurant.
it's a fancy restaurant. And if you don't like it, just ask for one of the other things on the menu. You don't
Uh,
have to, you can pick more than one meal.
So
I don't
Amanda
get
and
it.
I on this one, it's kind of an anniversary cruise. I mean, it
Okay.
was last summer, but we didn't take a long trip then.
Hmm.
We are doing the chef's table, which
Ooh,
just
okay.
seems like a special thing, but
Right.
it was like $90. I mean, it's
Okay.
not super cheap, but we're comfortable paying that for this experience. Most
Yes.
people won't, but
Right. And
that's a
doing it
way.
once is way different than doing it every time, right? Like
Yep.
that's,
This is a way, though, they're making a little bit of extra money because we were willing to pay it. And most people, and there is a subset that I'm sure they have enough to fill the table once a night,
mhm.
but most people aren't willing to do that. And that's another way they make an extra couple grand in revenue. A couple grand here, a couple grand there across the ship when with the many thousands of people who are on each particular ship.
Icon of the Sea, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 7,000, 6,000. It's in the,
I think you're right. I
it's
think it's
over.
over seven if it's,
I think with the crew, it comes really close to 10,000.
yep.
Which is just, yeah. I mean, some of our listeners live in towns smaller than that. Um, it's fascinating. Like I love, and this is where maybe I should have been a supply chain person. I love just sort of thinking about the specialization that goes on inside of a cruise ship. One of the things that really confused me when I took my very first cruise was how often my room got made. Because right, it's my first cruise. I didn't know this, and it seemed like that little cabin attendant was just waiting for me to come back. But compared to like a normal hotel where like a crew is maybe servicing multiple rooms, your cabin attendant might have 10. And he's just basically like going in circles, fixing your room, making the towels into monkeys, doing all sorts of stuff.
Yep. Yep.
But even just like there's all these really great videos online. I think it's Business Insider has a bunch of them of showing the efficiency of getting food onto the boat and off the boat and all that sort of stuff. And it's so cool to watch them sort of in the galleys preparing 1,000 plates of salad for every meal every night. It's fascinating of just like the
Yeah.
specialization that these people go through.
Looked it up. 7,600 passengers at maximum capacity. And then a crew of 2,350. So you're right, it's
Okay.
almost 10,000. That's Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania has about just under 6,000 people. So this is a
The
floating
whole
city
the whole
bigger
town can
than
go.
Selinsgrove, right? And everybody needs to be fed. There needs to be a doctor
Mhm.
on board if things
Yep.
happen. Then they have all the entertainment. They have to figure out the trap, the optimization
Hmm.
of the traffic flow? How do you have events in different spots so it's not overcrowded in one particular spot?
Oh, so my trip to the Bahamas, if those of you listened, did we actually talk about my trip? I don't know if we actually talked about it. I think we kind of talked about it. I don't know if there was an episode about it.
Not
Basically got
much.
rained. It also got rained out. So if the Bahamas Bowl had happened in the Bahamas, I probably wouldn't have actually seen the game because there was a massive storm that came through. But I did not get to go to Coco Cay because the weather was so bad they couldn't dock. So instead, we got a day at sea. So they sort of the storm was so bad they kind of instead of stopping there, they floated us out away from the storm
Sure,
so
sure.
that we took an extra day. But you could sort of see the panic of the people on the boat because right they weren't planning any activities for the day. And all of a sudden they're like, well, now we need to have a full day at sea. But
Correct.
they did an amazing job of just being able to move people around and get shows going and all sorts of stuff. It's just really cool to think about like, and they do that every 3 days. It's just the 3 days and then they start over again. It's the same thing
Yeah,
again. It's amazing.
absolutely fascinating. So speaking of the workers, one thing that I think is interesting on this, right?
Yeah.
These are not in America,
No,
right?
and I was gonna pivot to this too. So I'm good. I'm
Okay.
glad you did.
So these are like they're sold on the American stock market, but these are out at sea and they'll dock in the in the US, but these are not in America. And if you go on a cruise ship, you will notice a wildly international
Hmm.
crew. Many from countries that make lower incomes.
Hmm.
And part of it, of course, is the wages that are accepted. I think I am not certain of the exact, I'm not privy to the exact wages
It's
and would they
low.
comply with minimum wage laws or not, but they're lower than what would be necessary to induce the same that amount of Americans to work in the particular.
Yes.
And the hours can also, they're not subject to 8 hour a day laws for hours. So
I
it's a
don't think there's
very
no way
touchy
they're working
subject.
8 hours. They're
Yeah.
they're working all day long. Like,
It's an interesting
mhm.
subject, and
Yes.
I've had heard people have very strong opinions on this, saying they disagree. They think this is appalling that somebody would make low wages and have to work so long on the particular cruise, on a cruise ship.
Yeah. Let's also add that the boats are registered in other countries too. So they're all boats have to have a flag associated with the country that they're from. Almost all of the boats are Jamaican or Bahamas or Panama. They're not considered U.S. vessels, which is really important. Going back to what you were saying, like everything that you were listing off is really important, but also sort of from a taxes, a safety, a gambling, like all those sorts of rules too. They follow the country of their home flag unless they're docked in the United States, and then it's different.
You have to follow for them, but it's pretty interesting. So there are some people who are like thinking this isn't right. The economist in me sees it a little bit differently, that this is actually providing an opportunity for somebody to really make quite a bit more money.
Yeah,
And
this is where I think you and I are gonna, I'll say, surprisingly agree. Even though
yeah,
we've talked about this before, that we end up agreeing on a lot of
we end up
things
agreeing a little bit
before.
more. Yeah.
Um, I'm in the same boat, Matt.
Yeah.
I think it is. There are moments where it's really hard on me, kind of there, sort of realizing that I'm enjoying free time, and these cruises are really cheap, and I would have been willing to pay more, but I think about that regularly, but I think about that even when I'm going to a Taco Bell or something. Like it's in the back of my head.
Yeah.
I try to make up for that in terms of tipping, which makes sort of helps me alleviate some of I think the guilt behind it. But I think exactly what you said, right? That I think there's a difference between low wages where somebody is being forced into labor, where we're talking about indentured servitude, slavery, anything in that space, versus people opting into a condition that is better than what they could have gotten somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or if we think about this in an international context, these jobs are, and I'm going to assume from the worker's perspective, or else they wouldn't do it, that these jobs are better than the jobs they could have gotten at home.
But
And so in that sense, it is a Pareto optimal result. I'm benefiting from low prices. They're benefiting from better pay.
this
There's
is,
I have guilt, but I try to fix that with tipping.
I don't really, I don't think I have the guilt on that. I
Okay.
see in talking to the individuals there, it's quite clear on a lot of them, right? This is the dream job. Like they're able to build a better life. I really admire, the folks that I've talked to who are doing this, right? Like somebody who's taking the effort to doing something a little different, a little scary, and earning money, saving money, and really getting a much better life for themselves and for their family. I think probably tip reasonably generously as well. But I think going on the cruises as a whole, the fact that these things exist mean all of the individuals who have these jobs are better off than if
Yep.
the jobs
My
didn't exist.
my guilt comes from how I see other people treat them. And so
Yeah.
I
I don't think that's cruise line
no,
specific.
that's not
Or
cruise line specific.
specific.
And I don't know that it's necessarily people who go on cruises do
Or
that.
yeah.
I just I wish we were all a little nicer to each other. And I don't understand why people treat other people like that. And there are times, and again, just like what Matt said, this is not a cruise specific scenario. You see it in restaurants all the time where I don't know where it comes from, but people will treat their servers poorly because there's some sort of power dynamic at play. And I'm like, they're humans. And at the end of the day, they're going home to a family. Treat them with some humanity and dignity as a human.
Yeah.
So I think that's where my guilt comes from, is that I try to make up for some of my other cruise passengers, I think.
Yeah.
So I probably tip a little bit more than a generous amount.
That's very nice. That's very nice. So we talked a little bit about the price discrimination, a little bit about worker conditions, a little bit about the product and cruise differentiation. Anything else and a little bit on the supply chain aspect of it?
Well, I'm going to say, Matt, I think, at least for our listeners, the people who have been listening for as long as they have, maybe we should have talked about cruises earlier. I didn't know you and I were going to get so excited talking about cruises.
Do a part two.
Yeah. So you know what? One of the things that's fascinating, we talked about the kind of the flags and the home, like where these boats are located, sort of home country wise. I saw an interesting perspective on this, and I don't know. I'm in the same boat where, like, okay, if the United States was really mad about it, you could raise port fees, if you want to try to get some of that money back. Like they could do things if they wanted to try to get the money back. They're choosing not to. But one of the things I saw that was really interesting, at least from I think I saw it from Royal Caribbean, where they sort of explained their perspective, is that essentially the boats aren't in the United States for most of the time that they're docked. They pick people. So I choose to go out of Miami and Orlando. But like basically they pick you up in Orlando for a half a day, and then you spend 2 days in the Bahamas, and then you come back for half a day.
Yeah.
They're in the Bahamas most of the time. They're not in the United States half the time, and they're choosing, maybe the Bahamas, maybe Jamaica. Maybe that's not where they spend most of their time. But their argument was basically they spend more time at those ports than they do at the U.S. ports. So even though it starts and stops in the United States, they're spending more time over there. I thought it was an interesting perspective.
It's an interesting one. I'll be curious for our listeners. I know cruising is very popular. Point out any other interesting economics lessons from cruises that you've seen, or tips and tricks. It's always fun to hear everybody's best cruising tip. Kind of fun for us, but we are about at the point to think about pop culture. Any pop culture things coming to mind?
I very quickly searched cruise in my econ media library, but there's one that is about cruises. It is from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It has nothing to do actually with the cruises. However, it's about what time you arrive at the airport. So one of the characters in the show is going on a cruise, and he's talking to his coworkers and is basically figuring out, like, hey, he needs to get to the airport in order to go to his cruise. What time should he arrive? And he's sort of a naive person, so they told him that he needed to be there at least 8 hours beforehand, or else he's probably going to miss his flight. And so he falls for it, and ends up believing that 8 hours is appropriate. But Matt, I think either you and I have talked about this before, and in terms of efficiency, I guess it's a really good chat, since we started talking about cruises and their efficiency. There are a group of economists, notably Tyler Cowen talks about this regularly, and says basically if you've never missed a flight, you arrive at the airport too early, and you're wasting time. So Matt, maybe we'll do a little weird connection with efficiency. Do you show up early, or have you missed flights?
I have not missed a flight. I have come very close twice.
Okay.
To the point one, I have come past the check-in point twice in my life. And both times they were able to like get me onto the plane after saying, "Oh, this isn't going to work
Yeah.
for you." Uh, I I kind of buy that argument. I suppose it
I
depends
buy
on.
the theory. I
I
don't,
buy the
I don't
theory.
buy.
Well, the question, I guess, is how miserable is your life at the airport? If you
Mhm.
think being at the airport is just the pit of misery, well then,
They also they must fly from big airports. Matt and I are flying from Harrisburg and Roanoke.
well, I go
If
to
we miss our
BWI or Newark some of the time, but
if
those
we
aren't.
miss our flight at Harrisburg,
Oh, we're in trouble.
we're in trouble. So we need to show up early.
Yeah. And then I've evolved. I used to have a little bit more of that opinion, but then I'm like, it's not the end of the world to sit and read or pull out
Uh-huh.
the laptop and
That's
do work.
that's me. I log off early. I'm like, hey, I got to be at the airport. I'm not working the second half of the day. I use it as part of my vacation.
Yeah, yeah, and it's perfectly fine if lounge access, if you ever can, lounge access at the airports are glorious if you ever
Mhm.
have. Now, our small ones will not have that, but some of the others do. So,
So what's your pop culture?
nothing. I have nothing on
Nothing.
cruises.
Okay.
But
Well, then this is
I
good. We had two conversations here. So this was we expanded our
yeah,
pop culture to include a concept.
include a concept. So I have I'll have maybe our next topic I'll have something that's related on pop culture. The one thing I'll say is the for those who are Curb Your Enthusiasm fans, I the final season is dropping now. So the second, by the time this drops, the second episode will be out. And every Friday I'm doing a video on economic lessons from there. Have you ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm? Is that yeah. Uh Larry David puts himself in the most ridiculous scenarios.
I'm not a fan of the show. I don't,
Okay. Um
which
I
is weird because I love Seinfeld and George is an amazing character, and I know
yeah.
George is based off of him.
And it's funny because I'm a
Don't like
way
her.
bigger fan of this than Seinfeld. But
Mm,
there's the ridiculous situations. So there's some coming up. Speaking of cruise lines, there will be one on the economics of tipping
okay.
that comes out. There's one on signaling and screening because Larry David decides to wear a MAGA hat in order to first offend people so that they'll go away from him, and then he figures out a scenario where it really helps endear so there's a bunch of them. If you like it, you can check out the YouTube videos that are coming out. So
Yeah.
that'll be the pop culture shout out I'll give for
Okay.
things, but not a specific
So
one.
your selfless plug.
I will be shameless. I have no. And you wrote a very nice article about Icon of the Seas if you want
I did.
more on cruising. So
I didn't
check
even
that out.
mention that. So Monday
The
Economist has one.
Monday. Is it just Monday Economist? I always thought Monday
No,
morning.
it's Monday Morning Economist, but I shorten it to Monday Economist sometimes just to make it easier.
Yeah, sure. But no, so that's a great article if you're looking for a little bit more write up on cruises. So how was your beer?
Actually, Matt, so I didn't finish it because we were having such a good time talking. This is one of the few times I think Matt and I have, this is the most verbs and words we've used together. So I think if somebody runs the transcript, you and I have talked tremendously. I haven't gotten to drink very much. So
Man,
I'm going to finish this right after we log off, but it is really good.
great. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please give a nice review, thumbs up, all of the good stuff. We appreciate it. Leave a comment, and until next time, cheers.
Cheers, Matt.